would now like to introduce Mary Robinson to respond to the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Just like that.
Thank you very much. Good morning. And as you know, Agnes, I do look forward very much to this very special get-together that we've been having for 6 years now. And it begins with a more private meeting in the morning with members of the joint consortium on gender-based violence. And that is all of the relevant NGOs, as you know, plus Irish Aid, plus the Irish Defence Forces. And the discussion that we have there has become deeper each year. And this year, the CEOs of those organisations like Concern and Trócaire and Oxfam and World Vision, etc., all committed to using indicators to measure their performance. So that's a kind of serious step forward that links with the work that is being done in what seems to be now a very good inclusive process on preparing our plan of action under 1325. And because we've taken time and needed to take time for that plan of action, we've been able to learn quite a lot. Minister Mary White spoke about the cross-learning with Liberia and Timor-Leste. I was at the meeting in New York where she presented the report to the new head of UN Women, Michelle Bachelet, and I listened to the Minister of Gender of Liberia, Vaba Gayflor, speaking from the heart about how important it was that a country of the north like Ireland was willing to learn from Liberia and listen and engage and get that experience, that it was a very respectful relationship. And the ambassador of Timor-Leste, because the minister unfortunately couldn't be there, also spoke in similar terms. So that, I think, was a good practice. And I know the fact that Ireland decided to twin with Liberia, as it was seen, stimulated Finland to twin with Kenya. And they've had a very good relationship in working on their national plans of action. And I was very impressed by this publication, a good practice guide for the monitoring and evaluation of national action plans on United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, because it looks at good practices in a number of countries. And of course, from Charlotte today, we've heard, I think very valuably, the British experience. An early national action plan, but quite a few problems, because it didn't have a proper monitoring and evaluation, and it was a bit, I think she was sort of saying kindly, a little bit superficial maybe, but certainly the commitment to go deeper into that plan is very important. We're not exactly behind in preparing our national action plan in real terms. I think I'm right in saying there are about 22 national action plans globally, and is it 8 or 9 in Europe? So of the 27 countries, that's still less than half. And internationally, it's not as exciting. And that's why the 10th anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325, which took place this year at the end of October, was so important. And we had a kind of strategy from an international civil society perspective. Over a year ago, there was a meeting in New York to which we invited the Deputy Secretary General, Asha Rose McGeero, and we persuaded her to establish a high-level task force in the United Nations of the heads of agencies on 1325 for the 10th anniversary. And in response, she said she would do that, but she also wanted me to bring together a civil society advisory group to that task force on 1325. Margaret Wallstrom was serving on that task force on 1325 because of her mandate that she has outlined so clearly this morning. And we put together a civil society group of 14 people. I had an excellent co-chair, Binti Diop of FAM Africa Solidarity. We had 3 good men, very good, very active men out of the 14. I think that's about the right proportion, you know, just keep them under certain attention. And I never chaired or co-chaired a group that worked harder for the 10th anniversary. And we worked at all kinds of levels to try to be persuasive. And it was very encouraging at the international level to be present, first of all, during the UN Development Week, which was focusing on the Millennium Development Goals. On the Saturday of that week, when people were supposed to be very tired after a lot of meetings and side events, etc., the biggest conference room the UN has at the moment was absolutely full, and more than 20 ministers and representative of government and over 60 speakers in all committed that they were already actively taking steps for the 10th anniversary, and they would say more during the proceedings at the High-Level Security Council meeting. At the High-Level Security Council meeting, over 90 people spoke. It was one of the, I think, the largest open Security Council meetings there's ever been. And many countries committed themselves to plans of action, including the United States. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who spoke, committed the United States to provide $44 million for women, peace and security issues, notably for women in Afghanistan, women in the Democratic Republic of Congo, etc., and that the United States would begin a process under 1325. So I feel that the engagement here in Ireland is very much part of a wider, at last, beginning to prioritise the need to address gender-based violence in conflict, which is the particular mandate of Margaret Wallstrom, but gender-based violence much more widely. And that's why I think it was really very good that Susan McKay was able to speak honestly and directly about the situation here in Ireland. It's entirely relevant, and we need to connect and continue to connect both issues and both parts of it. So each time I come to these meetings, I really feel very enriched by what I hear, and I must pay tribute to the Joint Consortium and to its steering committee and its members. When we were talking privately, I said this is a slightly bumpy year for reasons that we needn't go into here, but in fact I think the Joint Consortium has come out of it even stronger. I think it was good that Brendan Howlin was here to speak about the parliamentary dimension. So all in all, I feel that the members of the consortium are not only stronger in commitment to the consortium, but they've deepened that commitment, as I said, by committing to indicators. And we talked also about a substantive issue, which I think is going to be one of the most worrying issues for humanitarian and human rights reasons over the coming months, and that is what is going to happen in various parts of Sudan. The situation in Darfur is getting worse. Humanitarian agencies are squeezed. There's more violence on the ground, but somehow it's gone out of fashion. There are fashions in the West of what we cover and what we pay attention to. And unfortunately, Darfur is no longer as fashionable in the United States or elsewhere. And yet the violence continues. And southern Sudan, which has been relatively peaceful under its CPA, is now under that, expecting 2 referenda in January. And there is a lot of conflict, both about the referendum that may and looks as if it will mean that the South will want to go independent, and also the middle area where the oil is and which is in dispute and where the border is not at all clear, where there will be a separate referendum. And we need to monitor this situation extraordinarily carefully. The consortium has indicated that it will take this up in January and try to share experience between members of the consortium, try to also draw more attention to the fact that we're somehow, as was mentioned in an interesting word, we're somehow sleepwalking into the possibility of a terrible conflict again in southern Sudan that was brought to an end painfully some years ago. So we're not just talking process here and PowerPoints about monitoring and evaluation. We're talking about one of the most serious issues in the world, and that is violence, gender-based violence, and the still under-participation of women as agents for change. They do extraordinary things on the ground, but don't get visibility. I saw a figure that about 4.5% of the signatures on peace agreements are women. I don't know who did the calculation, but it's indicative. And we've seen the situation where women carry the burdens, as Margaret has put it, are agents for change, are willing to take responsibility, but very often are not visibly there. So 1325 is about women's participation. It's about prevention, participation, protection, promotion. And I think we're in a place where internationally, I think more of a priority is given, and I think the consortium is at the heart of continuing that priority here in Ireland. So overall, I'm really very encouraged. I could talk for a long, long time on this subject, but I want to stop now because Margot and myself would be very happy to take part in the discussion and deliberation with you before we have to leave and you continue the discussion internally, as Agnes has said. So could I end by just a tribute to Agnes. She's been here since the beginning as the honorary chair of this day of the private meeting with the consortium and then the more public meeting in whatever way it takes place. Now she's taken on another role in her copious spare time of steering forward the inclusive 1325 process. And I must say I really appreciate that, Agnes.
Thank you. However, if it touches my role as granny, the process can wait.